afternoon, all. My name is Fari Kasodia, and I'm a board member at CHESA. And in celebration of the Black History Month, we are here to talk with Brad Boston, who is the founder and CEO of SunCatch. Welcome, Brad.
Thank you for having me, Perry.
So, Brad, tell us about yourself and your organization. What does it do?
We install commercial solar systems, rooftop, ground mounts, and carports. Design and install, I should say. Plus, we have a heavy emphasis on battery with many resiliency hub projects going.
Perfect. How did you get started in this field, and how long have you been in this space?
I am a fourth generation electrical contractor. My great granduncle became a lineman with the Army Corps of Engineers in World War I. He came home and taught my grandfather, and lo and behold, we have SunCatch Energy LLC now.
Great, that's a fascinating history that you're sharing with your family members. So as an industry, we have a lot of work to do in making sure that the solar industry is representing the communities that we are in. What can you tell us about your experiences so far working in this industry? And where do you see the gaps in your experiences?
Well, I started in the solar industry 10 years ago. And when I first started, I found myself, without exception, being the only African-American in the room. Now, maybe I'm the second African-American in the room. Workers, you see more workers than you see owners or people working at services higher than the building of solar systems. But with a lot of work and the environment we have right now in the country, things will change.
Great. And what's your prospects for the solar industry as a whole? Where do you see it moving in the short term and the long term?
In the short term, I would say the solar industry is in the same place the auto industry was probably within the first 10 years that it started. We're reaching economies of scale with cost, and we have labor costs going down with the new products that are entering the market. So it's going to be adopted. It pays for itself.
Yes, it does. And what advice would you give to young professionals who are coming behind you?
Learn. Number one, learn. There's so many resources available on the internet, whether it's construction, technology, design, and engineering. You don't have to spend a lot of money to get a very good understanding. You'll have to find a door to open for you to work with that knowledge, but there are large resources available for free, and I would suggest hitting the internet day and night and just learn.
That's great, great advice. And for those who are interested in connecting with people in CHESA, we are always open to talking to young professionals. Any last words from you?
We have to make solar cool. We've got to let people know the opportunity that exists. You know, there's not too many fields right now where you can come in unskilled, and if you've got the talent, make $100,000 in 4 years. So it's a wide open market, and we have to go and find workers that have been left out and pull them up. We need everybody to work. That's the bottom line. We need more workers.
Yes, we do. So thank you so much, Brad, for your time. And we really appreciate all the great advice and the work that you're doing in the solar industry.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Walter McLeod, and I'm the board secretary for CHESA. As part of Black History Month, the Chesapeake Solar and Storage Association is spending this last week of February spotlighting outstanding Black professionals in our industry and network. And so in this series of interviews, I have the privilege to talk to Mr. John Bayagas. John is the president and CEO of Bay Electric Company, which is located in Newport News, Virginia. John, glad to be talking to you.
Thank you very much, Walter. Glad to be here, and I certainly appreciate it.
Great, great. John, let me start off by asking you, tell me a little bit about yourself and your organization, your company.
Well, my claim to fame mainly is I'm the youngest of 14 children born in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So that's not a typical thing there. We had 8 boys and 6 girls in the family, and me being the youngest, our father was a master electrician. So all of the boys learned the trade from little boys up. Prior to child labor law, we were working at 5 or 6 years old, but it taught us a great trade. And I had a chance and left Louisiana in '86 and moved up to the DC market. And 2 brothers and myself, 3 brothers actually started a company called Ava Electric and General Contractors. Prior to that, our dad, we had Biagas and Sons and Biagas Electric, but moved up to the DC market and took that company and grew it a ton. I had a chance to buy Bay Electric in 1997 and embarked upon this, married a girl from Virginia. So that's kind of how, you know, went it up here and bought this company, Bay Electric, and grew it about 100-fold. So we're really blessed.
That is a phenomenal backstory, John. It says a lot about your parents and your lineage, and you should be proud of that. I'm sure you are.
Certainly are.
So tell me, so you bought Bay Electric. How did you get started in solar?
You know, approximately 12 years ago, we were an 8A contractor in the federal government space here. And if you know anything about Hampton Roads, this is like the mecca of federal, and up by your end as well, Fredericksburg and DC. So we did a lot of work from Maine to Florida as far west as Texas. So one of the projects we did was a little solar array for, I think, a Navy customer about 12, 13 years ago. And looking at that, it was rather small. And I said to myself, you know, I should probably have this on my roof. And about 12 years ago or more, we put a system up, 1 Soltech panels. Unfortunately, they're no longer in business, but we put 103 kW here on my roof. The panel efficiency back then were 230 watt panels, which that's improved upon a ton. And it actually took care of half of our consumption. We've got a 28,000 square foot building here, and taking advantage of the ITC credit then. And I'm scratching my head saying, this seems like it's a pretty good deal, this solar cell. And then since then, we've done a number of projects all across this region.
Wow. So you started with your own building, and then you expanded out and made it part of your business.
Exactly. So that kind of a little different way between that. We've always done utility company work. When I ran my brother's company in DC, we did a lot of work for Pepco Utility, a lot of utility and URD work and things of that nature. So we had some familiarity with the utility type work, and kind of knew in the back of my mind the solar thing, you know, would get larger and larger, Walter. So we're glad to be in it.
Outstanding. Now, as you know, as an African-American professional, it's no secret that the solar industry has more work to do on racial diversity. So what would you say the industry can do to improve on that?
You know, it's the reach out theory. I know something, we have a full-fledged apprenticeship here, and we try to mentor, you know, African-American and also, you know, minority companies as a whole to try to get them involved in this. And, you know, the solar world, I think we're just beginning. There is so much that needs to get done, you know, in the arena with the things that are happening. We find ourselves getting, and we're located in both a opportunity zone and a hub zone in Newport News. So we're right on the east end. So basically what we're doing is encouraging young men and women while they're in high school to come aboard. And we have a apprenticeship program as well as a summer intern program. And we try to bring African-American young men and women into the fold and try to teach them. And solar is unique because it's sort of repetitive. So once you learn it, the install is one part, but the maintenance is another driver. There's always going to be maintenance that has to get done either on a monthly or quarterly basis. And that's a growth industry for us, but we're reaching the high schools early and using some of the organizations here that help some of the lower income young men and women try to find a true profession that they can make a great living at.
I'm really impressed to see you building out that talent pipeline. That is so important, mentoring and directing that young talent into this space. Hopefully we see more of that.
We need it.
Great example. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And that's something I think the high school, we've got to get into the schools, Walter. Probably, I would say even the middle school, or maybe even from a freshman year. I think the state of Virginia really has a little bit of work to do. 20 years ago, we had a great entree into the high schools, but when they took the apprenticeship directly, the feeder, if you will, from the high schools directly into different trade organizations, that hurt us. But I think the thinking on that is changing. And look, as a workforce, the diverse workforce is the future. I mean, African Americans and also Hispanics are going to make up the majority or lion's share of the workforce. So we need to embrace that wholeheartedly.
Yes, yes. Let me ask you, looking 5 to 10 years out into the future, how do you expect the industry to change and grow?
I think that technology is really increasing tenfold. It's unbelievable what a solar panel is. I mean, we're buying panels now. One, the cost has come down, as you full well know, tremendously, but the efficiency, we're at 420, 440 watts a panel, which is amazing that in a short time frame that the technology has evolved. But one thing we're most excited about, both the technology and the diversity, Virginia, as you know, the legislature and the governor here have adopted where the utility company, main utility company, Dominion, they've got to install 16,000 megawatts of renewables over the next 20 years or so. That's a huge number. And even if that were half just solar, that's enough work for a lot of people for a long, long time. And you take into the maintenance side of it, that's going to be huge. But what I love about it most is diverse people are now going to have an opportunity, Walter, to not only install these systems, but in a large way own them and lease them back. And that's a wealth creator. You're talking about a 20 to 25 year stream of income, great annuity, and you can build upon that and really live the American dream. So I think we're on the edge of really doing some great things, and we're excited about it.
It really is an exciting time. You nailed it, and it's great to see us in it.
Yes, sir.
Meeting. My last question is sort of just blue skying a bit. What do you see for the generation coming up behind you in the solar industry?
I think we've got some work to do. I think the last decade or two, we've always had high schools and the like geared kids toward college, which is great. And even when they're in college, I think we have to have a network to embrace what's happening with the solar movement, all the green energy that's going to need to be provided, as well as wind. But I see us being able to, where the kids are getting educated younger, we can probably embrace that and probably steer these kids in the direction of the younger generation coming behind us to take the bull by the horns. Instead of just working for someone, you should strive to work for yourself. And the workers behind you, you teach them to fish instead of giving them fish. And that way, we actually are building back our areas and also communities where we can be self-supportive and not be totally reliant a lot of times on government and all these other things. But where we're at with it, I'm excited because the solar industry is unique. The barriers to entry have been lessened somewhat, but I think we have a unique chance to have a whole new generation of entrepreneurs in the solar space that can pave their own way and really be multimillionaires if you look at it, and have longevity wealth where they can help their families. And just we're blessed to live in this country. There's very few places in the world that you can take the bull by the horn. Will you have obstacles? Yeah, everyone's got obstacles. But I think the solar industry is unique in that if you learn it well and you do a great job, there's just so many areas you can be successful at. And I think it's a great opportunity. And the younger generation are pretty smart. So they've got the technology savvy. They've got all of that, you know, stuff with the computers and the phones and all of that. But putting that to use is going to be great. And they're a little bit more efficient than probably you and I, which is a good thing. But if you harness that in the right way, it's awesome.
You know, John, your words are sweet music to my ears. And I'm so glad to see you making these strides in the solar industry here in the Chesapeake region. I'm glad to see you being successful and being a role model for other young entrepreneurs that will come behind you. So we thank you so much for your time and your experience, and we look forward to engaging you as we all together build this new clean energy economy here in the United States. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate you reaching out and look forward to helping.
Hi, Crystal. Hi, everyone. My name is Pari Kasotia, and we are live here in celebration of the Black History Month with Crystal Hensley of We Solar. She is the founder and CEO. Welcome, Crystal.
Yes, thank you, Pari. I'm glad to be with you guys.
Sure. So let's get started. Why don't you tell us about yourself and your organization?
Yes. So I'm the founder of We Solar. We Solar is a next generation community solar firm that specializes in customer acquisition and small scale commercial development here in the DMV area.
Very cool. And you're the first Black woman to have a community solar business. How did you get started in this space?
Yes, I would say that just working in the field, I joined a regional startup at the time, Neighborhood Sun, about 3 years ago. And that's when I really discovered my love for selling and marketing and doing community outreach for community solar. I just love how it's the great intersection between bridging the gap of traditional solar and virtual shared solar shares, and being able to offer those savings for a community that looks like me, which traditionally that just wasn't the case and those options didn't exist before. So that's what really motivated me. And of course, I wanted to bring my own ideas, have my own control over agency and decisions. And the only way to really do that is if you're up for the challenge of starting your own organization and leading your own firm.
That's wonderful, Crystal. So my next question pertains to diversity and equity in the solar sector.
Yes.
As you know, we are striving to represent the communities that we work in. What can you tell us from your experience of how far we have come along, and what are the gaps that you're still seeing that we really need to work on?
Yeah, I mean, this sector it's very interesting. I can see a lot of initiatives. I'm really excited to see, you know, trade organizations like SIA and really give my ideas on how we can diversify the industry and make sure all BIPOC communities are included in the just transition. I would parallel this to my experience when I was the diversity initiative coordinator for Senator Harry Reid, Majority Leader Reid, back in 07-08. That's when there was a New York Times study that had a very interesting photo where there was just no Black staffers, and you know, it just started the whole mantra of, you know what, we need to do something. And so Harry Reid started a leadership committee, and I was one of the very first people in the federal government to head a federal initiative for diversity. And I can see in 2021 bringing that experience, and you know, the solar, as far as executives, it's 90% white, and so the fact that I am the first Black woman with the community solar company, I'm not necessarily anything different. It's just the suppression and the historical racism and the opportunities that did not exist that created this opportunity in a sense. But at the same time, that just shows you we have a long way to go, but we're at least moving in the right steps.
That's great to hear. And we are all committed towards that equity and the future that we all want to see. So in terms of the solar industry itself, what do you see are the short-term and the long-term trends that we are hoping to see in the next year and next 5 years? What's your outlook?
Yeah, I think the renewables have fair market share to really gain more of the generation market. And, you know, we see what happens in Texas, that we can't always rely on our old ways. And yes, they have like their own grid situation, but it also shows like, okay, we need to diversify our portfolio if we want to be sustainable and if we want to create this just transition. And so, in the long term, I definitely see, you know, in Maryland, we want to be 2020. They want to be 100 by 2050 or 50 by 2030. I think that that's doable. For the federal government, the GSA announced that they wanted to be 100% in by 2025. And so it's just about looking at what other areas are doing and working together as a collective and making sure that those PPAs and the organizations that make up the market have diversity HR, very intentional recruiting methods. You historically, you know, don't just go to the Ivy Leagues or, PWIs. Reach out to all the minority schools and the community schools, because there's a lot of ideas and that diversity and the creativity that it brings by just not re-examining how we recruit for the industry, I think would put us on a great trajectory, short-term and long-term, by just making sure we have a diverse pool of candidates that also brings that innovative and creative ideas to the table.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So what's your favorite thing about the solar industry?
I just love the fact that, when I get into, my bag, as they would say, I can literally walk into a grocery store, walk into a bank, or an opportunity if I'm just talking to someone and say, hey, did you know that you have access to solar energy? And, they're like, what? I don't own a home. I'm a millennial. I'm an apartment dweller. And I can recount a time, so many times, because it's kind of my personality, where I would just introduce myself at a community meeting or some type of social gathering and just be able to elaborate. And as you know, you worked on so many community solar initiatives and bringing that, on active and different jurisdictions. And I love where we can actually implement those policies at the community level and doing the education around that. And I just love seeing when it finally clicks, especially the demographics that you said, you know what, I was paying so much money and I can definitely see the benefits, how it helps and how it offsets the burden for me and also my loved ones. And that domino effect where it comes from another close tie. It's like a people link. And that's really great, because that's how you really infiltrate and really spread your message, especially a positive message, when historically we just didn't really see those type of policies and messaging that was really intentional for our community, to better our community as well as our global ecosystem.
Yes. And I have one more question. So what advice would you give to young professionals who are looking at the solar industry or the clean energy industry?
I would like to say, bet on yourself. Never doubt yourself. Don't be afraid to speak up for yourself, especially for women. They can feel like this field is really intimidating. It's male dominated. And also, you don't necessarily need to have a technical, that's great, but the solar industry has opportunities for everyone. Whatever skill set, you can be an analyst, you can be an installer, you can be a CEO. And I didn't go to school for sustainability or energy systems. I'm learning that as I go, and surrounding myself with folks who have tenure in this space with strategic partnerships to make up that gap. I mean, when President Obama ran for president, he didn't have much foreign relations experience. He was also a first-time senator. And so he reached out to our now current president, Joe Biden, who was the chair of the Senate for Relations Committee at the time to really fill in that gap. And so you can do the same thing. And that's exactly what I'm doing, where I don't have a traditional solar experience, but I have networked and realized those who have to make up the gap where I'll fall short. And in that sense, we can still put competitive proposals and really have a robust team under We Solar.
Mhm. That's great advice, Crystal, and you're an inspiration to so many people, especially young Black women. So thanks for all that you do and for your commitment to increasing solar access in this country. And we wish you all the best. And thanks again for joining us today. And thank you to our audience.
Thank you for having me, and congratulations for highlighting Black entrepreneurs in this space. I love to see other trade groups like SIA follow suit, and just continuing to power forward and promoting our rich cultural legacy.
Thank you all for joining. Have a great
Thank you.
weekend.
Thank you.
Hey, Wes, can you hear me?
Yes, glad we got the setup.
Wow, it took a little while, but we finally broke through.
Yeah,
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. I'm really pleased on behalf of CHESA to have you as our special guest for Black History Month feature, and talking a little bit about climate and clean energy, and a group that you're one of the founders of that's gaining some notoriety, Black Oak Collective. So if you have a moment, I'd really like to learn about yourself and the organization.
Yeah, thank you so much. In my day job, I am the Deputy Press Secretary for Evergreen Action, which is a climate advocacy group that's really been pushing the envelope on federal policy and fleshing out a lot of the meat and the bones on Biden Democrats like climate plans. And we started Black Oak Collective this October. Myself and three of my friends from University of Virginia and another of my friend from an internship I did over the summer came together, and we were just noticing that we were getting a lot of jobs, environmental jobs, and didn't really have a place to send them, but we're also tired of being the only Black people in certain spaces. And so we wanted to have a community for us to both to share our experiences and talk about this stuff, but also to be able to bring in more people, right? And we've been brainstorming through April. This was back when we thought, okay, well, maybe we'll be able to actually, have in-person happy hours and everything like that in person. But it's been all virtual, and I've been really pleased. And with Black Oak, we're hoping to do three things really. One, build up the pipeline with jobs and opportunities, and also just leadership, right? So it's not just entry-level positions. It's important to reach college students, professionals, but we need people like yourself at the top, right? Making the decisions and leading the priorities, and then community as well, and making sure that when people make it into these professions, they have mentors, and they have people who can tell them how do you break into spaces and do the culture, as well as fireside chats, collaboration, learning, because it's not enough to just be a Black face in a room. You have to engage with environmental justice, with equity, and that plays out in a lot of ways, and especially with solar, where adaptation for Black and brown families and low-income families hasn't always been where it needs to be, and that there's a lot the industry can do to advance that if we get more leaders in.
Wow. Well, Wes, you touched on a lot of really important topics there that I think will resonate with both my colleagues in the clean tech space, as well as young people who are potentially looking at careers in this space. So how did you get started in climate and in clean tech? Yeah.
Well, I will say that I was actually a history major at the University of Virginia, and I thought that I wanted to be a historian and then a lawyer, and I really started getting involved with student activism at UVA, and then went into Virginia politics. And my last job was actually as a body man for the state's Attorney General, Mark Herring. And so I would, drive him all across the state. And we actually, no matter where we went, we kept getting, you would see signs or, people would come up to us and say, hey, we're really concerned about these two pipelines in Virginia, the Mountain Valley and the ACP. And, there wasn't much that he could do personally. It's a little more mixed about his office, I think. But it was frustrating to be in a position and seeing this where people from, whether it's Union Hill, which is a prominently Black community, or rural communities, and whether it's Roanoke or wherever, say, hey, we all don't want this. And, knowing that and knowing the climate impact of it and not being able to do anything about it. And I felt really strongly that I wanted to get involved more deeply into the climate. I have, family also who are impacted in Norfolk and also elsewhere. But I was just looking to get into new work, and I reached out to some of my other colleagues in both the nonprofit space as well as the Virginia politics. And the opportunity came up to work with Evergreen Action, which had formed out of the Jay Inslee primary campaign. And so I had a bit of an unorthodox path, but I've been doing a lot of the reading, and I've been, learning and talking to more folks. And my colleagues Miles and Kier have a lot more of a traditional sort of climate background. But I think the most important thing I would just say for people watching to take away from that is networking and relationship building, no matter what field you're in, are just extremely important. And it's not just like collecting names. It's wherever you are, just getting to know folks and sharing a bit of yourself and being willing to, especially when you have Black and brown leaders in a room, learn from them and stay in touch with them, not just, when you need something, and you never know what'll come out of that.
Well, that's a good point you make there, because there are lots of paths into climate and clean tech. You can get in on the advocacy side, you can get in on the tech side, there's the industry side, a government side, and we want to see people, Black and brown people, all people involved in every aspect, and not silo us so that people think, oh well, if it's going to have to do with social justice, we'll put you all there. That's key to everything, but that certainly is a component of this whole struggle around clean energy and climate. So as we talk about that, I mean, I think of us being at the very beginning of the clean energy epoch, where things are really going to change, infrastructure-wise, economy-wise, and everything we do. We're moving to decarbonize the economy. So when you think about that and the work you're doing, looking out 5-10 years down the road, how do you see things changing in the kind of work that you do?
Yeah. I think that one thing that's encouraging is Black Oak is not the only group of young Black folks getting together. We have a specific job and career focus, but people, there is I think the fact that climate and clean energy are a Black issue is seeping in, right? And it's not just that we can talk all day about disparate impacts, but there's a difference between, saying we don't have, that climate is impacting us, or we don't have enough adaptation in there, versus, being in the room or being in charge and saying, hey, we're going to make sure that we're dedicating this percentage of our resources into, these communities in Virginia, or building out, more distributed solar so people can actually, make their own energy and own it, or, having carve outs for folks who otherwise wouldn't be able to pay to, adapt clean energy. So I think that and also building this leadership pipeline. And I think I see that we're building spaces for us to talk about it so that it's sustainable and people aren't just kind of cycling into organizations and businesses and then cycling out and burning out, but that now that we have these community spaces, like including Black Oak, we can support our networks so that we can, continue to help each other lift as we climb and prevent people from cycling up. So I think that the pipeline is strong, and I think that people are really thinking about climate and clean energy as a Black issue. We had a panel, one of our first panels, one of our speakers, just mentioned that one thing we can't do is have electric vehicle adaptations, and the same thing goes for solar, be like a sign of gentrification, right? Just when Black folks come in. So that would be my answer to that.
Yeah, no, that's spot on, and I really like the point you make about especially underserved folks cycling in and cycling out of this space. I know in the tech space, I have a lot of colleagues who work out in California in tech industry, and that's a big problem they have, is retention of folks that look like us. They may get them in, they may get them excited at first, but for some reason, they're not able to hold on to those folks. And that's a recurring problem. That's a problem in clean tech too. And do you have thoughts about, I mean, obviously Black Oak is going to be a mechanism for camaraderie and mentoring and connections so that people can find perhaps other ways to stay in the industry. But do you have some recommendations or thoughts about how we can sort of ebb that revolving door process and keep people in and let them work their way up instead of out?
Yeah. I think that you have to be very intentional about making allowances for meeting folks where they're at. So not everyone will have the same traditional background where they can just work a straight, 8 to 5. If you have kids, or you're still going in school, or you're supporting a family, does your workplace have proper, protections and allowances for folks with different backgrounds? I think that's like really important for every industry. I would say also just going back to our question of focus, which communities are we investing in, and how are we, either providing them resources or, pricing out or giving them information and capacity. That I think that people you want to make sure in any industry that your community is being reflected in the priorities of that organization. So that's really important. But it's also, some of it is just intentional leadership decisions when you're thinking about promotions and hiring, right? And who's in the room when we're talking about promotions and hiring, and also, are we just trotting out, if you have board members, are they, that is maybe more diverse in the organization? What role are they playing in there? So I think there's a number of things that apply across industries that you can do for building up the leadership pipeline. But you just want to make sure that you're investing in the employees that you have in your organization, that they feel like they're being, their voices are being heard and not tokenized. I think are just very universal and applicable things.
Yeah, no, those are spot on. So I have one last question for you. Although you're pretty early in your career, we're going to expect to see a lot more and hear a lot more from you over the coming years. But what do you see for future generations of underserved and Black and Brown individuals who want to pursue a path in climate and clean energy? What do you see in the future?
Yeah, well, I see a lot of Black Oak in the future. And I think we are doing a lot of proactive outreach to colleges and HBCUs in the area. And we want to have a lot of, not only just a job board, but proactive, fellowship and mentorship programs and MOUs with some of the, big environmental organizations. So I think that community space, not only a community space, but also just a resource to be able to plug people in and funnel people in from schools to, the big, whether it's Yale School of Forestry or, Michigan or whichever, whichever schools are best for tech or clean energy. I think that's really important. And I think that there is also, we want more folks who are at the top being able to talk to people who are just starting out their careers like myself and say, here's how you make it in this industry. And there's a difference between having a seat at the table and convening the table. And I think that's what I want to see in the future is more of us, starting on companies, but also being in leadership in companies, and then also just working across fields, right? So it can't just be you're in clean energy and you're not talking to any people who are on the ground doing EJ work, right? Because where the community, even with solar, you still have to consider where the facility is going to be built and how does that, for example, affect property value and everything like that. So, and again, like some of your focuses with build out and prices for, low-income underserved communities, the people making those decisions have to be in conversation with both, us at the top, but also even if I'm at the top, if I'm the CEO of, a certain company, I need to be listening to folks who are on the ground and what their concerns and needs are. So I think those are just some important priorities to think about over the next few years. And I really hope that Black Oak can be an important part of connecting leaders at the grass tops and the grassroots, as well as building up the pipeline for the future leaders to step in, and then just being a community and a home and a safe space for Black people in the field.
Well, Weston Gobar and Black Oak Collective, this has been a real pleasure listening, hearing your voice, your story, and looking forward to seeing more from you and your group in the future. Thank you so much on behalf of CHESA and the entire solar and solar storage industry in the Mid-Atlantic region. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye now.